flame. While reports of this fire would have brought them to this street anyway, Hetty and Benjy got word of it in a somewhat different manner. Just after midday, Hetty had found a card left in their post box. A card with a sun and a crescent moon drawn on one side, and on the other a brief message. Last night, a fire took 8 homes on Barclay Street and scorched more than a few, but one home stands untouched by the flames. Such a message wasn't just odd, it was downright peculiar. And peculiar was their business. Although the day was still young, the fire itself was a distant memory, with only traces of smoke left in the air. What it left in its wake was still evident. Buildings here were mostly made of wood and were home to several families, both large and small. While this wasn't the slums, neither were the people rich. Some homes were divided so that as many as 6 families occupied a building, and most people rented out a spare room to any interested boarder. While only 8 houses had burned down, every building on the street, save the one miraculously spared, was damaged. This meant, of course, the street was filled with people. There were those who lived on this street, making light repairs to their home and casting spells of protection. There were people tending to the dead and wounded, people checking on neighbors to see what survived the fire, and others jealously guarding piles of recovered possessions. As Hetty and Benjy walked the length of the street, several people called out to Benjy for help. This was not unusual. The blacksmith shop Benjy used to work at was not far from here, and he was generous with his time and repairs. It wasn't surprising that so many recognized him on sight as the person likely to lend a helping hand. Not that he was hard to forget, in Hetty's humble opinion. He cut a handsome figure, even in plain attire of shirt sleeves and suspenders. Although more appealing was the easy air of competence and unsatiable curiosity in the world. While Benjy often pretended that other people's problems held no interest to him, they had gotten involved in mystery solving because deep down, he couldn't help but care. "You take this end of the street, and I'll take the other," Benjy said to Hetty. "We'll meet at the still standing house." "Why not go there first?" Hetty asked. "Because there are plenty more interesting questions to ask before we do." With that, Benjy crossed the street to assist a man dragging a trunk out from the rubble, already asking about what had happened last night. Hetty should do the same, but she was a bit reluctant. It was never easy asking questions about the fires. People lied to her face or were too wearied to give a proper answer. A handful were rude, and quite a few were wondering why she even cared. A fire was a fire. A tragedy that ruined what strangled hopes they had for a better tomorrow. A fire that pushed them to move in with friends, with families, with strangers, or finally convinced them it was time to leave the city. What caused the fire and why mattered little to people who had more than their fair share of things to grieve. However, not all fires were accidents. Something more than a mere fire occurred here. She could feel it in her bones. At the end of the street, 24 bodies were stretched out in neat lines. Most were badly burned and bearing mortal injuries that no healing magic could cure. The rest were people who died from breathing in too much smoke and fell unconscious. The group was mostly adults, and the youngest person was on the edge of adulthood. No children. Good fortune, one would think, until you remembered what happened to orphaned children. Babies and the very young would find new homes easily, but the older ones would have a much harder time of things. Hetty saw a handful now, huddled on the corner, and she wondered if any of them had lost family in the fire. As Hetty